This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, and we are knee-deep into March Madness, and since it is March, I thought we had to bring back a great role player who had a huge shot in the NCAA tournament way back in the 1990s to help the Iowa State Cyclones win one of their greatest NCAA March Madness games. His name was Klay Edwards, and as you probably remember, Klay Edwards was a star at Winfield Mount Union High School back in the early 90s, where he teamed up with Jess Settles. That's right. They had two big-time Division I players on that small 1A team. They also had two other Division I players on that small 1A team where they led Winfield Mount Union to the not the NCAA tournament, but the state tournament multiple years in a row, where Klay was a three-time all-state tournament team pick. He was also a two-time All-Stater on top of that. After Winfield Mount Union, he, of course, took his talents to Ames, Iowa, where he was recruited by Johnny Orr, played under Tim Floyd, also played under Larry Eustachy. Klay Edwards also played in both the Big 8 and the Big 12. So he has some really great perspective on changing over of coaches, which Iowa State is going through now, and also kind of a generational change of Iowa State and college basketball. And this was a really fun interview because Klay is still tied to the program. He does some color commentary work for Iowa State. He's coaching high school basketball today. He's a great guy. And this was really fun for me to have on the podcast because those Iowa State teams of the mid to late 90s, those were my teams when I was a kid. I grew up, I was 10 years old in 1996. And so that Tim Floyd, Larry Eustachy era of basketball is really where my fandom of Iowa State really was formed. And so this was a lot of fun for me. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. And we would love it, folks, if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. But enjoy today's episode with Moonlighter Klay Edwards. Klay Edwards, Cyclone basketball legend, joins us on the podcast today. Klay, for starters, what do you think of the TJ Otzelberger hire?
I like it. I've known TJ for a while now here, and yeah, just the dudes he brings in, and I've watched his head coaching experience at South Dakota State and then UNLV, and yeah, I think he does good things. I'm really excited.
What do you think it's going to take for TJ and that new staff to bring back the Hilton Magic?
Well, obviously, number one thing is wins. I think just the excitement of getting some players in there that are, going to get up and down, but defend and, just do the little things that make Iowans excited. The Cyclone Nation fans love it when you get out there and you show that you're busting your tail and putting in great effort. They appreciate that. They're blue collar. But going back to like my Floyd days when he would just leave us on the court when another team would call timeout, and we weren't playing at a fast pace or anything, but the crowd would just go nuts because we were busting our tail,
That was like the coolest thing I had ever seen at that point. Floyd to just wave at you guys to stay out there, and the crowd would just go crazy.
Yeah, and at first we had no idea what are you talking about? It's timeout, but we kind of got used to it, and the crowd just ate it up, and it was all about effort, with the crowd. So just getting that back, and yeah, it should be good. I think he'll do it.
I've seen the fan base, the Iowa State fan base is a little bit splintered because of some of like Jake Sullivan's comments on Twitter about like Iowa State needs to recruit more Iowa kids and this type of mindset. Back in your day, they had guys like yourself was an Iowa guy, Hoiberg, Meyer, Pearl Beecham. There was a long track record of great Iowans that have played at Iowa State, but also there's been a lot of Iowa guys that have had great success at Iowa State too. Also, a lot of guys that you've played with, but in the years since, we've had a lot of not so much homegrown guys. What do you think the right mix of, recruiting your own home state, but also making sure you're getting top tier nationwide talent is?
Yeah. So I think you have to recruit in the state. And honestly, if we're looking at this truthful, for a long time, there might have been 1, 2, maybe 3 guys that, like the D1 in-state schools could look at and say, yeah, that guy can play in our conference. But I think that's changed quite a bit. Back in Hoiberg's year, there was a bunch of them. And, after that, it kind of maybe slowed down a little bit. But the kids now are so skilled and good. I think there's a handful like every year, and I do think we need to jump back in there and make an effort to, which he's already done. TJ's already done, talking with Taman Lipsy but yeah, but it's got to be both. It's a fine line, I guess. I don't know the correct answer to, how many in-staters do you need? There's not a correct answer to it, but we just have to be active there because there's so many good kids in Iowa anymore.
Yeah, back in your day, Winfield Mount Union was the high school that you played for, back in the 90s, and you and Jess Settles on the same team. Jess Settles, of course, a longtime Iowa Hawkeye. I bet you guys were just destroying teams over in Eastern Iowa back then.
Yeah, well, there was. I tell you what, there were some good teams down here too. We had a nice run, definitely in Southeast Iowa, but there was some good dudes like every year. Whether it be one team one year and the next, but we also had like Eric Rawson played at South Dakota. He was on our team, and then Bert Lappy played at UNI. So we just had a run of, call it luck or whatever, but a run of D1 kids in Class 1A Southeast Iowa. So it was fun. We put up a lot of points. Took it pretty hard on some rims, and it was fun. Our gyms were packed. We would have people just lining the walls when we played, whether at home or away. So it was good times.
Outside of AAU basketball, I'm sure you played some AAU as well, but in high school basketball, like Winfield Mount Union, who was the best team that you guys ran up against, or maybe the best player that you ran up against?
Oh, I would say maybe the best individual player might have been Jermaine Wilform. He was a Burlington transfer that went to Harmony, which is now part of Van Buren County.
Okay.
Just 6'7", super athletic, skilled. And he played with a really good guard down there named Chad Boudreau, who is now he's an assistant college coach. I think he may be at Western Illinois. Is that where Rob Jeter's at?
I don't know. You know better than me.
Yeah, I think he was an assistant up at Wisconsin Milwaukee, and I think he's at Western Illinois now. But those are one of those good teams, and they made state one of the years, the first year we did in '92. But Jermaine was a stud. But there's a lot. I mean, yeah, we played against the Bauer twins from Hudson. Went on to play at Iowa. I'm probably gonna forget somebody and make them mad. Well, the DeVries, both Darian and Jared. That's lost to them in the finals in my sophomore year. So yeah, there was a lot of good kids.
So you're growing up in Southeast Iowa. I mean, the eastern part of the state of Iowa, it's like they don't even realize Iowa State University exists. How do you end up in Ames when you grow up in Eastern Iowa?
I really like Coach Orr. He was my guy. Unfortunately, I never got to play with him, but no, I grew up completely 100% a Hawkeye fan. And I even debated playing football at Iowa. It kind of came down to football at Iowa or basketball at Iowa State. And so I was a 6'7", 185 pounder when I graduated.
Where'd they put you on the football field? D end or tight end?
Well, I played quarterback. And
no
remember
kidding.
back in those days, they liked the big quarterback. So I don't know if I would have ended up there or not, but Yeah, I loved football. I loved the physicality of it, but I was so scrawny. I was like, dude, I'd probably get, broken in half. So I stuck with basketball. I was probably a little better at basketball and suited me better. But yeah, Coach Orr was the one that, he was fantastic.
Was Tom Davis recruiting you as well? Because, Jess Settles, I'm sure you saw Davis a lot recruiting Settles right the year before you.
Yeah. He did. They ended up taking, I don't know if you remember this name, Greg Helmers.
Oh yeah. Yep. Remember him real well.
So they went with a little, Yep. So we had played them in the state tournament and everything, but, they went with a little more size and, whenever I used to see, Coach Davis, I'd give him a little bit of crap, but, but he was good about it. And I understand he was, 6'11", 7-footer, those dudes don't grow on trees. So it was what it was.
No, they don't. I think he ran into some trouble while he was at Iowa, if I remember correctly, but we don't need to talk about that. But your time at Iowa State is so interesting when you're looking at it, and you got to be probably the only guy that was recruited by Johnny Orr, played under Tim Floyd, played under Larry Eustachy, played in both the Big 8 and the Big 12. You also played with, Fred Hoiberg, Lauren Meyer, Dedrick Willoughby, Kelvin Cato, and Marcus Fizer. You span a really interesting time of Iowa State basketball. And I got to imagine you're the only guy that spans all that entire, era.
Yeah. Well, listening to that, it makes it feel like I was up there for a decade, but it was only 5 years. It was only 5 years, but right. It was, really. Yeah. Like you said, it was really interesting. There was 1 year or one, I don't know, it's been a few years, but my wife and I sat down and just went through every teammate I had, whether they made it on the court or not. Cause we had a lot of dudes that would come and like Coach Floyd would bring them in and they'd be part of the team, but they'd only be there for like a month or something and just would wash out or whatever. So, I mean, the number of guys that I shared the court with up there is just staggering. And I don't want to say the number because I completely forget, but it was up there. There was a lot of guys that came through there and played with, and it was fun. I mean, you get to learn all about all these guys from all over the country and even other countries. But it was tough at times too.
Well, Iowa State's going through a coaching change right now. You went through essentially, 3 coaching changes there from, Orr to Floyd and then Floyd to Eustachy, I guess 2 coaching changes. But what is that like on the team as you have a totally different change of philosophy? Because I remember, the Orr to Floyd philosophy change was pretty stark. Floyd was more of a defensive guy. Orr was an offensive guy. Eustachy and Floyd was a little bit similar, but obviously you have personality changes and they bring in their own guys as well. What's that like to be part of that program when there's just wholesale changes like that?
Yeah. So they were actually like completely different scenarios for me because the first one, when Orr retired, I still had not set foot on campus. So I was still in high school living back in Morning Sun, Iowa. So that was really unique because then all of a sudden your phone starts ringing from a bunch of different coaches or, trying to push you to JUCO, saying I'll have a spot for you next year, whatever, So, but at that time, I would say it was a lot different. I signed, I was committed to Iowa State. I was staying with Iowa State no matter who it was. It didn't matter who it was. I was going to be at Iowa State. So there was some nervousness, though, with that, not knowing who you're going to spend the next 4 years with. But then when Floyd left, who, I had spent 4 years with, had a great relationship, I'd do anything for him. I'd run through a brick wall for him or whatever. And then when he leaves, then especially going into like my senior year, it's just like, what, I don't know. It's hard to explain and what it felt like, but a lot of disappointment that he left, nervousness about this upcoming year and just where you stood. Because at that time you're wiser, you know how a lot of these coaches do things. So you don't know if, they're going to come in and want their guys and push you to the side, or if they're going to really rely on you as an upperclassman or what, but so that one was a little tougher, I would say.
Well, and then they bring their new guys in, and you get all of a sudden, Kelvin Cato comes on campus, and you're the guy that's been around for a while, but all of a sudden, Kelvin Cato is something like Iowa State has never seen before. What's that like from like an ego standpoint when they're bringing in a new guy that are looking to take your job, and then somebody might be a little bit better than you?
For me personally, if the dude was better than me, then he's better than me. I'm, just work harder and try to get better. It's just kind of the way I grew up, and I wasn't going to say, I'm getting out of here or anything like that, which kind of seems like how they do it nowadays. But,
right.
I was, find my role, coach. And that was something Coach Floyd was really good about is, okay, this is the situation. This is what we need out of you. This is what you need to do to change that situation and get better. So he laid it out all right in front of me. So it was up to me whether I, took advantage of that and did what I could to get better or get more minutes or whatever. So I had no issues with something like that at all.
Who is your favorite team to play at Hilton? Like your favorite, Big 12 or Big 8 team that's coming to Hilton, and that Hilton's going to be on fire and it's going to be a fun Saturday afternoon?
Oh, it was Kansas by far.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There was always so much hype around that, and seemed like every time we played Kansas, it was Big Monday or it was on ESPN somehow. And not even close. I would say maybe Missouri was a close second back when they were in the Big 8, but definitely Kansas.
Yeah,
Plus, I knew I played AAU ball with Rafe, so we had a good Rafe LaFrance, so I had a good relationship with him, and it was just fun. Yeah,
the Cyclone fans, the Hilton fans, really liked Norm Stewart. Or at least they really like to give it to Norm Stewart, longtime coach of Missouri. And that hurt when Missouri left the Big 8 and went, or the Big 12 and went to the SEC. I missed those basketball games.
Yeah, definitely. And Norm recruited me pretty hard in high school, so I actually built up a little bit of a relationship with him, primarily through phone. But he was. Just wherever he went, people loved to give him crap, and they would always compete. And then they had some dudes on their team that, some people would say were dirty, but
Jason Sutherland,
Sutherland, Derek Grimm, Kelly Thames, that whole group were just like super tough competitors, and they were trying to win. So I don't think they were dirty or whatever, but so it was just so much fun playing against them.
What about the road trip? I mean, is the obvious answer is probably Allen Fieldhouse, but was there a favorite road trip for you?
Yeah, actually, the place that I thought was the most fun to play at in conference, even over Allen, was Gallagher-Iba. This was before their expansion, so it was like super tight. Fans are right on top of you, and then they got that cowboy that would shoot the blank pistols and just scare the crap out of everybody. And it was, I don't know. I just thought that was a super cool place. And they always had really good teams too. I want to say that's back. Eddie Sutton was still there. So it was a lot of fun. Then they'd stick you way back in this hallway in some tiny, crappy locker room. So just the whole, ambiance of like the road game and them treating you like crap was fun.
Yeah. So you've had a pretty good experience with Iowa State basketball over the last 25 years, with Johnny Orr and Floyd and Eustachy, and you've stayed pretty close to the program. You're still here in Iowa now. What do you think the high point of Iowa State basketball has been over the last 25 years that, you've kind of had your fingerprints on the program. We'll leave Barry Stevens and Jeff Hornacek and Jeff Grayer. We'll leave that in the 80s. But the last 25 years, what's been the pinnacle of Iowa State basketball in your estimation?
Oh, boy. I'd probably have to – it's tough. I would probably have to go with the Pfizer and Tinsley's team that lost to Michigan State. That run that they did, because they legitimately, that probably could have been a national championship team. I mean, they were so close, and Michigan State had no issues with anybody after they won that game. And then kind of along the same lines, Niang's group, them winning the conference titles, and then the runs that they were making, if George's foot doesn't get messed up or whatever, what could they have done? Some what ifs in both of those instances, but probably Pfizer and Tinsley's group first, and then the runs that Fred had with George in that group.
Yeah, that's kind of what my thinking was as well. But as far as like individual games go, as like a Cyclone fan for the last 35 years, the Iowa State winning the last ever Big 8 tournament down at Kemper Arena, that one was really special for Cyclone fans. I don't think we had ever won a conference tournament up until that point. It was the last year of the Big 8, and you were a big part of that team. What did that weekend mean to you?
Oh, that was unreal, really, especially to do it against Kansas, with JC stepping up and hitting, that huge three shot on that three. Yeah. And then to go back to the hotel, and it literally felt like you were outside on the concourse at Hilton Coliseum. There was like thousands and thousands of Cyclone fans in our hotel, which has come to become pretty common when you get a non-COVID Big 12 tournament down in Kansas City now. But I think that was probably the start of how Cyclone fans congregate down there, because it was just unreal. You literally could not walk anywhere down there without just being mauled by Cyclone fans, and it was awesome. But yeah, that game was, man, it was something. Just the defensive intensity and high level athletes going at it that hard, and for Iowa State finally to come out on top, pretty special.
When you win that game, you're down at like the greatest Iowa State party that God could ever create down in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
You're of age. You're probably 21, 22 years old at that point. Like, what is that party like for Klay Edwards at night? Like, are you drinking? Do you have 10 beers? Actually, what are you allowed to do as a student athlete?
Actually, I was like a straight and narrow guy.
Okay.
Didn't drink much, but honestly, like, what we were thinking about, we were having a good time with the fans and everything, but we were thinking about getting on the bus and seeing what our seed was for the NCAA tournament. And Coach Floyd was, had us under wraps pretty good. So if anybody was out trying to pull any shenanigans or having too much of a good time, we would have been paying for it the next day at practice pretty heftily. So we were all good boys. At least I think we were.
All right. I feel like I got a little bit of, your kids are listening, answer there.
That and my wife. Yeah.
So, that season though was so much fun. I think it was the same season, if I have my years right, because then you guys go to the NCAA tournament and you get matched up in the round of 32 with the preseason number 1 overall Cincinnati team. And this was Bob Huggins, Kenyon Martin, Danny Fortson. Like, this was an awesome Cincinnati team. I think you guys Iowa State got a 6 seed, which is really hard to imagine a really good Big 12 champion getting a 6 seed. But, as far as great games in Cyclone history, that Cincinnati Iowa State game was as good as it's ever been.
Yeah, just back and forth. And, the dudes you were listing off there, if you look at that roster, they had so many guys that, played years and years in the NBA. Kenyon Martin might have been like a freshman on the bench, and Reuben Patterson, the Melvin Levitt dude?
Levitt, yeah.
He could just fly. And, and just how that whole game broke down, the play-by-play at the end there with Cato pinning somebody on the backboard. They mysteriously call a foul on him. Lucky for me, because I got in at that point. But and then Pratt rolling up on Burton's ankle, and they call him for a travel, and it was just an insane game.
Well, yeah, you're leaving out the next piece there, right? So bad call on Kelvin Cato, and then the refs make another bad call. They call a travel on Burton when it was obviously a Kenny Pratt foul, but there's no replay at that time. It's kind of jarring when you go back and watch the game on YouTube because there's no replay, and essentially Iowa State inbounds the ball like right away, and you are the beneficiary. You get the inbounds pass, left block, left-handed baby hook right off the glass. Was that the biggest shot of your career?
Oh, by far. Yeah, definitely by far. And the play wasn't even run for me. It was run for Dedrick, but Fortson just helped maybe a fraction too much and gave me just a little daylight. And that's what I did because I was undersized 5 or 4 man. So do little baby hook shots all the time. So luckily that one dropped in and we were able to force, Damon Flynn into a tough shot at the end, and just squeaked her out. But man, it was a lot of fun.
What was your game like? Like, I remember watching you play, when you were in college. These were my prime, like, Cyclone fandom years when I was like 10 years old, right? But for kids that have never seen you play, right? For maybe your kids or people who listen to the podcast that never watched Klay Edwards in 1997, what was your game like?
Well, it's interesting because, like, in high school, I was like run up and down, jump, flying all over the place. And then when I got to college, that's kind of why I signed with Orr, because of his style. And then Coach Floyd came in, and it was a grinded out, possession by possession, defensive toughness kind of deal. So that's ended up what I kind of ended up being, was like a interior defensive specialist, maybe, if you want to call it. We had Cato that could fix anybody's mistakes at the rim, but if it came to, like, there's a defensive guy we just didn't want to, or an offensive guy we didn't want him to touch the ball, that would be my responsibility. And I'd even kind of sprinkle around to some wings, or heck, I ended up on Chauncey Billups and Tyronn Lue a couple times somehow. But, and we had Bankhead there too, to take away all the perimeter guys. But man, I was there to guard, be physical, and rebound. Rebounds per minute was probably my best stat. I would say. I didn't score the whole ball a whole bunch in college. And some of that was just our style, and Coach Floyd was pretty specific in who he wanted to shoot and from where. So, like I said, a lot of hooks on the blocks and maybe some face up 15-foot jumpers. But other than that, it was banging, rebounding, and defending.
So you're back coaching now. I don't know if you ever thought you were going to coach, but you're. I know you got a son on the team, and you're coaching. Mm-hmm. What coach have you stolen the most from?
Tim Floyd.
Is it all Floyd?
Oh, a lot of it. Yeah. No, I've taken a few sets from Coach McCaffrey. He runs some stuff I like, and really, I'll steal anything from anybody. I call J.C. Holloway every so often, and they'll ask something from him, and he's got a good long track record of coaching. So. But yeah, primarily Coach Floyd, same defensive philosophies and drills and everything we did up in Ames with him. And then I try to just offensively steal from anybody that has something that looks like it'll work. I try to get up and down the court a little more than what we did during my time at Iowa State, make it a little more fun for the kids.
What are you bad at as a coach?
Yelling at my son. No, that would be his answer. Oh man, trying to run zone defense. I really wanted to go into this season and run some 1-3-1 and 2-3 zone. I just can't do it. I don't know why.
Spoken like a true Floyd
I know
disciple.
why, but yeah, I know why, but I was like, we have to be able to do this a little bit. And I don't know. I just cannot get it. I need to spend a week up at Snow Valley basketball camp with all those coaches and just have them drill me in how to run a zone. But, yeah, that would be my biggest weakness.
What about your son playing like AAU ball? I know your son's a pretty good player, and the landscape is really changing. Even 15 years ago when I was in high school, we did a lot of team camps in the summer with our whole team going, and that was mostly of what we did. Every now and again, guys would play on the weekends with certain AAU teams when they would need guys to fill in. But now it's like all AAU ball starting really, really early. You're still in a small town coach. You got kids growing up in a small town. What's, that environment like for your son?
Well, we jumped on board with it a couple years ago here, and we play out of Iowa City. So we're going to be playing on the All Iowa TAC East. That's just starting up over here. So we got a good group of kids, and it's fun, because back in our day we just didn't know what was out there across the state, and kind of where we ranked against like the 4A schools or all that. And now they see these kids, every other weekend in the summer going to all these tournaments. So, they know they have work to do to get better, to compete with all these bigger schools, the kids from the bigger schools. So I like it. I like the competition. I think they do too. We got 3 or 4 kids that are, at Winfield Mount Union that play club ball in some fashion in the summer. So, it's really helping them out. I think it just seems like in high school, you can tell the kids that play club in the summer versus the ones that don't, because they seem to play at a little different speed and intensity. So I like it as a coach. I know there's some out there that don't, but to me, it's beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Well, Klay, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show, which I'm sure you know because you're a big supporter of the pod, is with the 5 big questions. All right. Okay. So first question is, who is your all-time favorite teammate?
Oh man, that's tough. I have 2. Can I split it?
You can split it. This is your show.
Okay. Okay. So J.C. Holloway and Tony Rampton.
Tony Rampton? That's a name that I did not think I was going to hear today.
Oh, yep. Tony and I are brothers from different countries. So, we went through a lot of the same stuff, going from Floyd to Eustachy, and just super good friends. And then JC he's always going to be my brother for life. So, we talk quite a bit still. And, those guys are my 2 dudes.
So in baseball, we have like catch partners, right? You always play catch with the same guy every day. Was Tony Rampton essentially your catch partner?
Yeah, you could probably say that. Drilling and everything. We banged a lot. So it's tough for me because he's a legit 7 foot, but definitely.
When you look back on your career, what's one memory that you have that reminds you of everything that you love about the game of basketball?
Oh man, that's a good question. It might be, and it's not even actually being on the court. I think it's the reunion that Coach Prohm had for my group that won that Big 8 title. Like the feeling I got when I was back with, not everybody was there, but our core group of guys was there being honored, and just being able to be around that group of guys. I mean, I love every single one of them. And we went through so much dealing with Coach Floyd and our practices and the whole grind of a long season like that. So just like the camaraderie and the brotherhood, of being with those guys and what it means to be a teammate.
Yeah. What still nags at you from your career?
The UCLA game.
Cameron Dollar.
Yep. And then the 5-second call, and yeah. I wish I could put that one out of my head forever, but I don't think I ever will. So, yeah.
How often do you think about it?
Every NCAA tournament, and every time I see UCLA on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was your role model growing up, Klay?
Well, other than parents, and you might appreciate this. My favorite athlete of all time is Ricky Henderson.
Oh God, you are right up my alley right now.
Yeah. So when I was growing up, I was a huge baseball kid. Like it was actually baseball and wrestling growing up. So my parents would take me if Ricky was playing for the A's or the Yankees, we would always make sure to get to Old Comiskey when he was in town and watch some games, wait for him afterwards. Just his confidence, his cockiness, and I used to think I was fast. Well, I never was, but I thought I was fast, and just watching the way he stole bases and teased pitchers all the time. I just loved it. So yeah, he was my guy. And man, I had thousands of baseball cards of Ricky Henderson. So, yeah, I was a baseball guy. Yeah.
I feel like you stole Ricky Henderson's haircut too.
Yeah.
You had like a flat top. You had like a Ricky Henderson flat top.
Yeah, he did. He would do that and then kind of shave the sides. And he actually had like the curl, almost like a curl mullet at times in the back. And yeah, dude, I even had the Mizuno batting gloves. Whatever he wore, I wore. I just didn't have the gold and the bling like he did. But yeah.
So Klay, your son is playing AAU basketball, right, in the summer, and we have summer baseball here in Iowa. You got to get your son playing summer baseball so he can be like Ricky Henderson.
That is one sport that none of my boys have ever really picked up so much on. It's just so different from like when we were kids. Like we spent every day in the summer from 8 to 11 and then 1 to 6 at night. That's all we did was play baseball.
Yep.
And I could drive from town to town to town, and you will never see that. I mean, you'll have your club teams practicing and then playing in tournaments, but you just don't see the kids out in the yard making a makeshift diamond and playing all day. And that's what we did. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of that too. And then, also pickup basketball is kind of going the way of the dodo as well. I remember I grew up in Fort Dodge, and you could always drive by Dodger courts in Fort Dodge. And if there are, 8 guys there, you're like, well, if I show up, that's 9, one more is 10, and there'd always just be guys collecting, and you could play for 3 hours without ever anything planned,
Yeah.
It's a totally different world.
Yeah. Eric Rawson and I used to grab Rawson, and we would, he'd jump in the car and we would just drive to different towns. We'd go down to Burlington or Mount Pleasant and just see if we could find pickup games to go play, whether we knew the people or not. And just spend hours there and compete. And yeah, it's just different. I mean, all the club stuff has definitely changed, the way kids compete now. That's for sure. It's a little more organized and it costs a little bit more money, but,
right.
But it was fun. It was fun getting to meet different people doing that or spending all day with your buddies. And, I opening up a pack of cards after lunch and then having a pop and going to play again. I'm kind of disappointed my kids don't get to experience that, but I guess everything's got to change a little bit, huh?
That's right. There's a lot of good things about organized sports as well. Sometimes as old guys like you and I, we just, can focus on the bad things and gripe about stuff. But there are a lot of good things about, being a little bit more organized with our youth sports. Final question here, though, Klay, is what's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, best, man. I feel like I've probably Coach Floyd. And I don't know exactly how he put it, but pretty much that effort can cover up a lot of flaws, whether it's in, playing basketball or another sport or work, whatever. If you don't understand something, putting in the effort and time to understand it. So really, just bearing down, giving effort, fixes a lot of stuff.
I like that a lot. Spoken like a true role player that you were.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Well, Klay, thank you so much, man. We're in the middle of March Madness right now, and I was, watching those old Iowa State highlights on YouTube today as I was preparing for this, and it got me so fired up for this interview. So thank you so much for doing this and for all you've done for Cyclone Nation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me, and I love the show. So keep up the good work.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.